Okay, I'm going to try and give an overview of this very prototype new implementation of Parade. I'm going to start by comparing, showing the new functionality with an old data set that we've typically used for the previous version of Parade. And I'm using a CSV file. Everything I'm going to show you is using CSV to load the data. And this file has been coming from some ImageJ analysis, where we've done some customized analysis on data to show one sort of point, one row of the table per image. So this is basically a representation of the CSV table. Here, if I scroll over to the right, I can see one image per row. And I can do the usual kind of things that we've done in Parade before, plot various values against each other. Filtering happens over on the left here, and I can filter by number values, filtering by a range over the histogram. And I can also filter by string values here, so the dataset name, I can kind of toggle these on and off, or filter by entering a string. One thing I can do that is new here is that if I can plot not against a number on the x-axis, but by a string, then it'll group all the points by that string, and I can give me a box and whisker plot with various statistics for each of these. I can also zoom in. The default behavior here is to zoom in, so if I want to see I can drag part of that to show just a restricted area of that plot, and I can auto scale back to show the whole plot. Okay, so this is filtering the numbers show up here. I've had 400 images, and I'm filtering out of that number. I'm just going to refresh the page. Okay, now I'm going to choose the export, batch ROI export CSV, and I'm also going to choose to load datasets because that's not included in the export CSV. Okay, so this is going to load a CSV that has images and also has ROI IDs and shape IDs, and there's little thumbnails for each of the shapes here. Again, it's plotting by default first two number problems, image ID against ROI ID. Let's choose something more useful here, area against some intensity. So you'd expect to see a correlation between these numbers. Again, I can select particular points here and show these numbers, and I can filter. So now I've actually got like 4,000 points here, and so when I plot against plot against dataset, I've got slightly more noisy data, but there's a lot more data being used in this plot. So that's kind of the main differences between the existing Parade and this new one for this kind of data. And again, when I'm filtering by each particular ROI instead of filtering by image as before. Okay, well, a couple of examples of something I can do with if I'm using more than one ROI per image. This is a FAP data that's one. There's actually only one ROI, one shape per image, but it's plotted through time. So the batch ROI export has given me pixel intensity for each time point in these images. So what I'll see in this table is for each, in fact, each shape ID, I have multiple time points. So I can see that more clearly if I plot, for example, time on the x-axis. This is again against image ID. You can see for each image has a number of points across time. And I can actually plot the mean intensity to see my FAP graphs here. This is slightly hard to make out between the different images here, so what I can do is group them by particular parameters. So if I group them by image, I can now identify particular images within those plots. Again, if I auto scale, we'll show this a little bit more clearly. Okay, another example. In this case, I'm going to have a large image. This has 150,000 ROIs on it. So this is basically just looking at how we can handle large numbers of ROIs. And in this case, for the CSV, I've not exported pixel intensity for each of those ROIs, but I've customized the script a little bit to include the X and Y coordinates of each ROI. So when this loads, okay, you can see that for as a single image ID, all the ROIs here, and so I've got some X and Y coordinates which my script has given me, so I can plot the X and Y coordinates of each ROI against each other, and this gives me some kind of idea of the layout, although the axes are slightly different. Oops. So I can zoom in and pan around on this plot, and gives me an idea of the layout of the various ROIs, and I can select a small number of them. I can also do plots, again, by something like area over border length, and again I've got some outliers here, so I can select individual ones of those, and I can sort here by area. So again, this is these ROIs here are sorted in the same way as the ones in this table. So again, by sorting by area, I can start to browse all my 150,000 ROIs, finding the largest or the smallest. Okay, final example, slightly more complicated, this one. So here I've got a couple of plates of images. One of these plates has 3 wells, 3 images per well. The other has 5 images per well, and each image has on the order of 100 ROIs within it, and all those ROIs have been exported into a single CSV. So we've got on the order of 26,000 ROIs to analyze in this screen. Okay, so it's loading the plate data here, so I can see this representation of the plate. I'm going to plot again, as before, plot, for example, pixel area against some intensity. And again, let's have a look at some of these outliers. I can select one of these shown in the table. Let's again sort by area, so I can see all the largest ones or all the smallest ones. So a lot of these don't have any area at all. If I select one of these, again, I can see where this one is within the plot. I can also see which well it comes from. If I mouse over these, I can see that this has actually got 114 ROIs within that well. I can click it here. I can show all of those, all the ROIs within that well, and in fact they're all highlighted here. So there's one outlier. Most of them are much smaller in terms of area. And in fact I can select additional ones here. They show the wells that these come from. So another way that I can investigate the differences between these wells is by showing a heat map. So let's show the heat map of pixels. Now this doesn't tell us very much. It's all green, and that's because over this range of area of pixels, the range is very much skewed by this one outlier. So the average, this is the heat map is based on the average for that well. So 300 rows, even this well up here that contains this very large one, the average of those is very much on the green side of the heat map. So what I can do is start to let's remove this selection first. Reduce the number of ROIs that I'm looking at using the filter here. So if I go filter by pixels, so I'm going to select just this larger sort of range of pixels here. And okay, so now I can see all the wells that have these pixels, and most of these will have one row. So in some cases, this one has actually 5. So 5 of the ROIs that were filtered here are in this one. And again, these are all plotted as an average. So these mostly look green compared with the one outlier. And I can reduce that range. Let's get rid of that outlier. Filter down a bit. And now I don't see anything. I see some more range between these, but they're all kind of so a lot of these still show an average. Okay, so let's go back to selecting a larger number of ROIs. I'm going to try and let's clear the selection here. So let's try and work with ROIs that are within a particular area. I want to get rid of ones that are too big. Let's filter, add another filter here by points. So it's basically kind of the same idea as area, but now I'm filtering just within the data that's already filtered, so I've got slightly better access. So I can limit my maximum size. I can see here what the biggest ROIs are as I'm adjusting this threshold. And then at the other end of the scale, let's see what the smallest ones are. Let's try and remove all the ones that are not whole cells. So I want sort of complete cells. Okay. So now that I've got this reduced range, I've got a much smaller range of them. Here I can auto scale to show just all my selected points. And now I've still got a lot of averages here. What I can also do to split this up a little bit is to show the individual wells, the individual fields within each well. So as you remember, the top plate here has got 3 images per well. The one one's got 5 images per well, and now I can actually see, so it's not averaging across the whole well, but it's just averaging the ROIs per image. So I can see some differences here. I can select ones that have got that's relatively green or slightly more red, black. But again, these are still showing the averages of quite a large number of points, so most of them don't show the full extent of the heat range of the heat map. I'm going to filter again by different, so let's filter by mean intensities to reduce the number a bit more. Okay, so now I'm really filtering more. I've got some fields that have some images that have 0 ROIs within the filter range, and I'm seeing some more variation on the heat map. So within some wells, I can see I've got quite large or small ROIs within them, and I can see that again when I'm selecting individual. These are selecting individual images and showing just the ROIs within each individual image. Again, if I was to collapse this and show whole wells, now I'm showing all the ROIs within that well. Okay, but on the left here, I'm still filtering and working with individual ROIs. What I can do is to to group all the data in the table by image. Okay, so now I'm not working with ROIs anymore at all. I'm just working, so that the table I have down at the bottom here just has image column, and all these values here are now average intensities, average values. And one thing I do have, because I grouped by image, I now have a column that says rows per image. So let's first just again plot by again area by sums, just the same kind of plot I was doing before. And let's sort this table now. I can sort by rows per image. So I'm showing images with only a small number of ROIs. Or again, if I filter on the other way, I can filter for images that have a large number of ROIs. And again, I can find a heat map with rows per image if I'm interested in the number of ROIs per image. And I can also, again, split this up by fields. So now these are actually not averaged values going in the heat map. Now these are actual, because I have my table is 1 row per image, and my heat map is showing each image is a heat map value. So again, I can pick individual images here that have a large number of rows per image or a small number of rows per image. And when I'm filtering here, I'm now filtering by individual images rather than ROIs. So if I can filter by images of average ROI area, for example. Okay, so finally, I'm going to do one more grouping up here. You'll remember, so I've already grouped rows grouped by image. So I've got a number of rows per image, which is the ROI count per image. So I'm going to add another layer of grouping on top of that. I'm going to group by well. Okay, so now I really have one value per well. I don't have individual values for individual fields anymore. I've got one row per well here, and the rows per image, the RYs per image, is now an average value averaged over the number of images per well. And the rows per well shows either the 5 or 3. I can show that here. So the number of rows per well is either 3 images per well for this plate and 5 images per well in the lower plate, whereas now the rows per image is an average value. So I can select in this well up here, these wells are a relatively small number of average RYs per image, and a larger number in some of these other wells. And again, if I'm now filtering by area, now I'm filtering by a much more an average value of actual value per well. Okay, I hope that some of that makes a little bit of sense, but and thanks for watching.